Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly webinar of the Unemployment Law Project. My name is John Tierpak, Executive Director, and we have Ann Paxton, ULP Policy Director here. We will begin the program with an update from Ann on the latest developments with unemployment, and followed by your questions and answers. We have questions from others as well that we will deal with. I would like to announce that there will not be a webinar next week due to some vacations, but we will return in 2 weeks, Monday at noon again. So Ann, can you take it away?
Thanks, John. Welcome to our webinar. Thanks for tuning in. We have some particularly great news this week that we are eager to announce, and that is that a lawsuit that we have been indirectly involved in through consultation with the Northwest Justice Project has just had a settlement signed between the Employment Security Department and NJP, and this involves the lawsuit involved problems with due process in claims handling at the Employment Security Department, particularly with relation to determinations of monetary eligibility, that is how much you earned in the prior year, how many hours you had, and in addition, overpayment notices and many other issues. So this settlement was just signed this last week, and although ULP was not a party to this lawsuit, but we're heavily involved in the consultations, and we've actually written into the settlement for a lot of stages of reviewing documents and going through a lot of monitoring. So what it involves is several provisions. ESD has agreed to resolve the backlog that existed as of June 1st on adjudication, intake, and identity verification. And that's supposed to happen by November 15th. And they will be reporting back later this month and in December on any remaining backlogs. Second, they're going to be prioritizing review of that initial monetary determination letter, which has been very confusing. A lot of times it would say you're eligible for $0 in benefits, which no one could understand what that meant. So we hope that is going to be one of the first things to be fixed. There's a lot of overlap with the provisions of SB 5193, the claims processing reform bill that passed in the last state legislative session. One of those is the dedicated phone line for claimants that have computer access issues or disabilities. Although there is already toll-free help for people with disabilities, and they will retain that, but they're expanding it now to include people with computer access, as well as addressing a lot of languages that they have not really dealt with before. They will also be sharing their performance reports that they send to the Department of Labor every quarter with ULP and with NJP in advance so that we can make a comment on them. And one promise that's particularly important in the settlement is that they will provide claimants with an explanation for any overpayment and a waiver application if the claimant is not at fault. And this whole experience of claimants finding out that they're at fault for completely unknown reasons should improve under this settlement, because they are updating their templates for explaining the fault findings for overpayments in the determination letter, because there are a lot of reasons why claimants can be held to be at fault when they're claiming they've had no idea that that this would be happening. Maybe they left something off by accident on their application, and that ended up as a finding of fault. So they plan to improve the noticing on that particular aspect of the overpayment. And then they will also include a notice that if you file an appeal of an overpayment, and this is important information that a lot of claimants don't have, as soon as you do that, you can ask the department for a hold on overpayment collections. So you won't be getting those very aggressive and frightening notices, at least while your appeal is pending, which could be several months. So that is definitely a big benefit that many people aren't aware of. When there are clients, we will let them know, or if they call us, we'll let them know. But a lot of people, of course, we only talk with them, a small minority of of the claimants who are out there. So these should be very significant improvements, we hope. We're very, very happy about the settlement being signed and with ULP's role in the improvements that have been promised at ESD. The second really great thing to report is a bill in the House of Representatives, HB 5507, which would bring a lot of improvements to the treatment of part-time workers in receiving unemployment benefits nationwide. And it would also increase equity quite significantly. So this was the bill that was discussed back in September, but took several weeks to be actually introduced. And now it is pending. It was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was from New York, was one of the sponsors, along with Donald Byer from Virginia. And this bill would significantly benefit all states, many states, far more than Washington, because many states don't even have 26 weeks of benefits guaranteed, and that would be provided for in this bill. But it would also significantly benefit Washington, and so I want to explain why. Even though we have a very progressive system, there are a lot of things that remain to be reformed. So one thing this would do would be provide benefits to anyone who earned at least $1,500 in the prior year, if you earned at least $1,000 in one of the quarters. So right now, that would bring a lot of people into eligibility for benefits in Washington who do not get benefits right now. The minimum is 680 hours right now, and with our minimum wage here, $13.69 per hour, that means that you have to basically make $9,000 in Washington state in order to get any benefits at all. So a huge swath of part-time workers completely excluded from the system here. So this would, Washington also has very strict limits, other limits on which part-time workers may receive benefits. For example, if you had, right now you can become, quote, part-time eligible if you had, didn't normally work more than 17 hours in a week. But if you had even 1 week in the base year, basically your prior year before applying, in which you work more than 17 hours, you're completely disqualified. So there's huge problems with Washington's system. It just has a lot of fluky items and a lot of restrictions that are not good. And this would also allow not only people to apply for benefits and qualify for them who haven't been able to apply before, but also if you were a full-time worker and did apply and you want to start looking for part-time work, right now that's totally forbidden. You have to be available for full-time work. And this bill would change that for states across the country. Right now, only a small number of part-time workers are allowed to do that. But if you wanted to choose to seek up to a 20-hour per week part-time job, and if that job is at least half of the work hours in your typical work week, then that would be allowed. So this would greatly expand the number of people who had more flexible options for taking a new job when they, while they're looking for a new job while they're collecting benefits. And this, another thing is the earnings disregard. This is a very, very limited benefit in Washington state, because if you may know that if you have any part-time work while you're collecting benefits, and a lot of people need to look for extra money because that's a big gap to fill, almost half of your prior salary you're not getting. So people may find some part-time work or some gig work that they would use to fill in the cracks. And right now, the state will take 75% of what you're earning off of your benefit. So you really get only 25% of that extra money that you might be bringing in under current law. So this would allow, instead, there would be something called an earnings disregard. So workers would be able to receive up to a third of their normal wage and salary through part-time work without cuts in their benefit. That would be a huge improvement for Washington state, and really for all states, because even in states with generous earnings disregards, they are not getting the kind of earnings allowance that they need in order to make up the gap. Yeah, I mean, I think our overall comment about this is Washington has a lot of strengths in this benefit system. We have the highest maximum benefit in the country, but you should note that the maximum benefit goes to very, very few people. You have to make $80,000, $90,000 a year in an average year in order to qualify for that. So we have some good things, but we also have some very, very strict restrictions. And this would be a big improvement for Washington state, but even more so for many other states. just as an update on the ESD implementation of claims processing reform. So this was SB 5193, passed in the last session, in the 2021 session, added a lot of claims processing improvements, and ESD has now issued its first quarterly report, which I mentioned last week, but I just wanted to mention a couple of additional things about why this is significant. So one of the major reforms that was provided for in this bill was revision of the letters that the claimants receive about their claim and what is happening with the processing of their claim and what the problems are. So what they're submitting these now to claimants to do user testing that was required in the project. And they are saying this would cause, this is a very big scale project because there's 138 different problems that could arise with a person's claim. And there's 700 separate variations of the information that might be, quote, dropped into a letter of notice that claimants might receive about how they can fix this. So this would require, the bill requires an actual explanation of the law and how it relates to this case. It requires the relevant facts to be listed, exactly what happened. What your boss said that you did X and you said that you did Y, and this has created an issue with your job separation and your qualification for benefits. So ESD has some research teams and writing teams working on these letters to improve them. So we have some hope that that's going to make a big difference. They're also exploring triggers that would require the agency to staff up their call center, for one thing. They're also looking into a pilot of having caseworkers work with claimants on their claim. This is similar to what they do with other benefit programs, where it's pretty much assumed that the benefit program is too complicated for many people to understand, and that they need a caseworker to kind of steer people, navigate people through the system. So any motion towards that for unemployment benefits, which is enormously even more complicated, would be very welcome. And they're also working on gathering background on language utilization to get a contractor to help with the dedicated phone line, which for information, which will eventually have 25 languages available on its special line. And that's in addition to the regular phone line, which would continue to have both English and Spanish. The online data dashboard is now live, and that's got very interesting information on it. If you go to the esd.wa.gov newsroom, and you will find the latest online data dashboard, which shows all of the elements that have been required about the claims center and about the processing of overpayments and about the staffing on the phone lines. ESD is hiring new people. They're a little bit behind on their hiring targets, but they have hired 43 new staff and made 84 internal promotions since the bill took effect, and they're continuing with that. One thing very significant about the data dashboard is the overpayment waivers data. So right now, there's about $175 million in overpayments that have been assessed against about 64,000 claimants. This is in the quarter of April, May, June. So this is the first quarterly report. So there's many more than that now. And waiver requests are received from a lot of people because they can't afford. As you may know, many people receive notices saying they owe $10,000, $15,000, $48,000 for benefits they receive. They don't understand why they didn't qualify for them. So this is a big problem. Waiver requests, unfortunately, are not being approved at a very high rate. And the last month that is recorded here, June, only 17% of waiver requests were approved. So that's something we would like to see more available to people. If you look at the statistics for the call center, you'll see that the vast majority of calls are not answered. Those are not even put on hold. So most recently in June, they had 492,000 total calls and 409,000 were not answered. Only about 64,000 of those calls were answered, and many of those are repeat calls. So one useful piece of data is the number of unique individuals how many individuals called, even if they made 9 or 10 calls, disregarding that. Unique individuals calling the claim center, 176,000 in June, but notice only about 64,000 of those claimants actually got through, because those were the calls that were answered. So I wanted to just close with an interesting comment we recently received from a claimant who had to go through slog through enormous backdating of PUA claims. These were claims that she submitted last year, but she had to justify them in a whole set of new forms, more than a year's worth. So more than 50 of these forms that she had to go through. And she was able to slog through and get through a year's worth of these look back forms, proving her eligibility for benefits that she already received. And her comment was, these were relatively straightforward forms, but each one required her to defend why the money she received wasn't an overpayment, and also included very frightening notices about possible garnishments and liens. So there was quite a lot of stress in answering it. And so each form had a page with a text about telling the truth, and then the basic questions. There were about a dozen questions per form. Then a page where she had to copy and paste her statement, and then a page to submit. So this, she said it took to get through an entire year's worth of forms. And I think she was quite fast, actually. It took her an entire day. But she could only do it in chunks of time because it was just so kind of overwhelming. And she wondered if ESD has focus groups that are looking at these letters, these forms and these processes. And that's something we're hoping will result from the reform bill. She said she felt she managed to navigate it, but she was very assertive. She considers herself very assertive. She says, I know several people in my industry who I've heard just gave up trying to either get any benefits or get their full benefits because the process was too overwhelming, taxing, and confusing. And she said she found this stunning because she wondered if these were people, many of them had college degrees. She said, this made me wonder how on earth someone who wasn't born and raised here would possibly get through the process if these people can't. Just the amount of time that was taken and the enormity of the task and the difficulty of understanding it were things that I think will also show up when there are more focus groups, more user-tested notices that should be happening because of the reform bill that was passed in the last session. So those are the highlights this week. Some very good news about our settlement and some increasing application of the reform elements in the new bill. So a lot of things to be pleased about.
Thanks, Ann. It is good to get some good news. So now we will open for questions. So put your question in the Q&A. Let's see, the first question is from someone who says that they are receiving questionnaires asking for information they've already provided. Why do they have to keep providing the same information? We're hearing a lot of this. And I think a mistake that some people make is ignoring these questionnaires and assuming that they already have the information. It must be a mistake. A good rule is whenever you get in a questionnaire from unemployment, to fill it out. It's worth the time. It involves money, potential overpayments possibly. And I think that it is much better to spend 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes for filling out some forms than it would be to then get denied, have to request a hearing, wait a couple months for a hearing, and maybe get it resolved that way. So it is, annoying for people, but it's good to take the time with that. Not today, but I've gotten this week a lot of questions about filling out questionnaires where the question is hard to understand, and people sometimes will read these questions to me and they're hard to understand. They're just poorly written. My answer is do your best to explain your answer, give factual information to the best of your ability. If it does turn out to be a problem and you are denied, or if there's an overpayment, then follow the instructions and request a hearing right away.
Yes, and I can just add that we've talked with the ESD many times about this repetitive information that's being requested. and why are claimants being put through this? And part of the explanation is, there may be a lot of reasons, but part of the explanation is that the Department of Labor is requiring, because of laws that were passed last January, the Continued Assistance Act is requiring the state agencies to go back and certify that these PUA payments were not made in error. And if there was any chance that a person would have qualified for regular benefits instead, they are required to report that to the Department of Labor. So it's one of the things that we can't totally blame ESD for. They really have been boxed in by this requirement in order to guarantee that they received the money from the feds legitimately. So just that's one reason I wanted to read this this comment by one of the claimants about the amount of work that was required. She understood that it had to be done. There wasn't any way around it. Just sort of sat down and decided she had to forge through. So she did get through, and it is difficult. So we do understand that it's causing a lot of trouble for people.
So next question is, a person who applied for unemployment benefits about a year ago. They were asked what their occupation was, and they picked an occupation that sounded closest to what they were doing, or and then more recently, there's been a response to a potential new claim alert, and they asked. They were asked what their occupation was, and they again did their best to say what the occupation it was. But then later they noticed that it might be inconsistent, that the wording would be different. And so the question is, would ESD notice any inconsistency and assume I was lying about my occupation and sent over payment benefits? I would not worry about this at all. I think when you say what your job is, if somebody works in a restaurant, you could say food service, you could say waiter, you could say, many jobs have different names and different ways to say it, like a more specific name or a more general name. I think doing your best to give accurate information in both these cases, even if they sound a little bit different, I don't see that being a problem for you. Let's see here. This person writes, I want to stop applying for unemployment as well as stop applying for jobs. So I need to let ESD, the unemployment office, know this. So if you stop claiming, you stop claiming, meaning you don't, I've been told that you can go in there and close your claim, but if you just not do your weekly claim each week, it will eventually shut down. So, and have you heard anything about this, like in terms of the best way to end your claim?
No, as far as I've heard, if you stop claiming, then you'll stop receiving benefits, and you should not be charged with illegally accessing benefits.
Right, and see, the system has many claims, and frankly, if you stop claiming, the system isn't going to sort of look for you or chase after you and figure out, well, why did you stop? Because people can stop claiming for any reason they want to. They can stop claiming because they've gone back to work. They can stop claiming because they've decided that they're not going to be looking for work. They can just decide they don't need the money anymore, or maybe their claim is running out. Many individual situations, but getting unemployment is not a requirement. It's a benefit that you may or may not be eligible for. So again, this is something kind of not to worry about. Just I know if you've been claiming for a long time, it's a weekly habit of going in there and answering those questions. But I think it's better just to stop claiming, period, because if you go in there and start answering questions like I'm not looking for work and not, then you'll start getting denial letters that you could appeal, and there's no reason to appeal them if you're not really intending on claiming. So it's better just to stop claiming, and it will close down. Let's see here. I had a question. So someone, this was an email sent to me directly. A person just got a bill from unemployment. They had stopped claiming, their claim had closed a while ago, but now they're getting a bill. It's been months since they've claimed. They're getting a bill for thousands of dollars and don't know why this is or what's happening there. All they have is the bill, and they said they try to call the number on there and didn't really get information. So I'm going to presume here a few things that are kind of common in this situation. Chances are, if you've stopped claiming months ago, it means you probably haven't been accessing the ESD portal or checking messages or doing that, because you would, of course, feel no reason to. So probably in your past letters and notices in your service account, there's probably a letter saying you are denied from here to here for this reason and you have an overpayment. That should be appealed if you disagree with that. If you don't disagree, if you agree with it and want to pay the money back, that is your choice. But if you disagree with it, and what we've been hearing a lot about are people who are back to work and are in a mindset of unemployment's over, it's whatever. And so for whatever reason, they're not getting messages either by US postal mail or through their e-services account. And it could be many things. It could be maybe there was a request for information that wasn't responded to. Maybe they wanted you to verify your identity again. Maybe you already did. Maybe there was a question about being able and available for work. More recently, since July, the job search has been reestablished. The job search requirements are reestablished. Maybe there was a request for job search logs that wasn't responded to. There could be a number of things. Oh, or maybe the employer appealed your case successfully and you didn't get the notice of the hearing. There are many possibilities of what could have happened. So first steps would be to go to the your e-service account, log in, and try to look back on all past notices and letters. If there's any questionnaires there that haven't been filled out, if you can send them in now, even though they might be late, that would be a good idea. Otherwise, I would urge you to call the 800 number on the ESD website. I know it's hard to get through, but you can, you should set a time up where you can wait and get through and try to talk to a person and find out what's happening. If you can't get through the 800 number, some people have had success calling their state senator and state representative's office to ask them to try to contact ESD for you. Some respond to this, some don't, but that may be a way to get through if that's a problem. And do you have any additional suggestions?
Yeah, one other thing is sometimes it might help to, if you have a relative or a friend who could look over your shoulder while you're on your e-services. Sometimes it's, you get into a rut when you're looking at the page. The screen. You may not see that there are little things you can click on that may have notices that many times people say they cannot find the notices, and we do find that they are on the screen under things that they didn't expect. Maybe it's under alerts, for example, or all notices. That's one thing. Now, there are some notices that we know ESD has deleted for unknown reasons, but in many cases, they can be found. So just do whatever you can to get another fresh look at your screen to see if there might be something you're missing. It happens in a few cases.
Okay. All right, thanks, Ed. Let's see, question. The writer says, WorkSource told me they have a phone that is an internal line and can get through to ESD phone line a lot easier compared to calling them from my phone. Are you aware of such a direct internal line that can guarantee the connection with ESD on the phone? And are WorkSource offices open now to the public? Are they open?
I believe, yeah. No, I'm not sure. I would have to.
I don't know. Because actually, I know through the pandemic they were closed for in person.
Yeah.
So WorkSource is a WorkSource offices around the state help people find work. They're, of course, part of Employment Security Department. I don't have any specific knowledge of their internal procedures or how I would guess that perhaps, since they are part of Employment Security Department, that they might be able, that the staff there might be able to contact people. But as far as people going to the WorkSource office, getting through on a special phone line, I really don't know anything about those internal procedures. But I was not aware that the WorkSource offices would be open now.
So we did know before the pandemic, we were told by many people that if they went to WorkSource directly, they were often able to get help. And sort of this was in many cases off the official books, because it seemed like a lot of WorkSource personnel were able to help people, but it wasn't part of their mandate. They were particularly supposed to be oriented to helping people get jobs, not helping them get benefits. But in many cases, they were able to get through. So we will check on this issue, whether to the extent to which they're open now, because that may be a possibility. Another one of those things where they're not giving a broadcasting a big announcement about it, but there are resources there that are worth checking out in many cases, especially computer help, because they do make available some training on computers and access to computers.
And also just it's worth repeating, you know, it is worthwhile to wait on the line, 800 number. And if you do get through, I've talked to many people who've been helped, some haven't, but it is worthwhile since there's money at stake. I know it's hard for some people with limited minutes or a limited charge on your phone, but I would recommend doing that. And also, again, some people have gotten some help by contacting their state senator or state representative's office. There are many districts in the state, and the response has been different depending on the office. But if you just briefly state your program, say that you live in their district and have a specific problem and have not been able to contact Employment Security Department, and ask them to have somebody on their staff contact them, or maybe set up a meeting or get back to you or call you. If you do that and you're giving your phone number, please be sure to keep your phone on and ready to take calls. One problem that we see a lot at the Unemployment Law Project is people will call our office seeking help, and we call them back, but then their phone doesn't take messages or there's no answer, and we try back a few times and can't get through. So it's important that if you do have a voicemail, make sure it's set up and you check messages, or that you have your ringer on so that you can get messages through the day. Let's see here.
And I was just able to confirm that most WorkSource offices are now serving customers in person as well as virtually. So they say contact the location near you. You can find those on esd.wa.gov. Just put in WorkSource, and they will help you with whatever they can. Mostly, as I say, looking for another job, finding another job, but they also have other services that can help you with your claim.
Okay, looks like there's one more question. So it's from a person who got PUA, it ended, and they're still unemployed, and they would like to know, is there any chance that the PUA program will come back to help them? So, Anne, do you have any thoughts on that, or what you've heard out of Washington?
No, I would say 99% no chance of extending that right now. In our state as well, they had the option of drawing on some other resources at the Department of Labor to extend PUA payments in some way, and the governor has said no. They're moving on now to sort of post-pandemic state of affairs. So there's not a continuation available right now.
And there's a number of reasons why a person would qualify for PUA, and there may be some ways to go. For example, if childcare was an issue for you getting PUA, there might be childcare available through some state subsidies through Department of Social and Health Service. That's a possibility. For people with severe health issues that really cannot work, perhaps, again, it's a very individual thing. Perhaps Social Security disability might be a way to go to seek ongoing support. If your health issues really prevent you from being able to work, you may qualify for a disability claim. If you're an independent contractor working independently, I don't see much in the way of resources there. We are back to pre-pandemic, where if you're self-employed or an independent contractor, you really are on your own in a way, and have to either get back to work on your own or figure out maybe another plan for income, because I think there's a bit of COVID benefits fatigue, I guess, in Washington, D.C. They put a lot of money into the pandemic programs. Now vaccination has become widespread. A lot of businesses now that are open have good safety protocols, and there are jobs available now. Of course, jobs might be available in certain fields that are not your field. That's always a question, but there are jobs available now. So I think politically, even amongst Democrats, there's not enough political will. I mean, they're having trouble passing the current legislation of economic recovery. They're having trouble passing that. So I can't see them getting enough votes to pass a pandemic renewal of the PUA benefits right now. All right. Let's see, Anne, any closing thoughts before we wrap up? That was our last question.
No, but do only one thing. Go to the website at esd.watica, because there are continual changes in things that are happening. If you go to the alerts at the top, like this nurse work source office reopening, I thought I saw something about this, but I could not be sure. So this is an important development for a lot of people, especially if you live close to a work source office to get some assistance there. So do check back with them to see what's the latest thing that's happening.
All right. So today's November 1st, we will have let's see. Oh wait, I misspoke earlier. We will have our webinar next week. I misspoke earlier, but we will not have one on the 15th, but we'll return on the 22nd. My error there. So we will return next week, November 8th, for our next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.